Hi, everyone. We are going to wait a couple of minutes before we officially start, just to give people a little bit more time to come in. Now would be a good time, if you're not super familiar with Teams, to see if you can find where the chat function is, test if your cameras are working or not. It looks like I might need to do something. It looks like everybody has their mic restricted. I see that your video is also restricted as well. I think that there is a way to do this for everybody, but since there's not that many of you, go through one by one and give you your cameras and your mics. Sorry about that. Probably was something in the settings when I made this webinar. Okay, I think everybody should have their camera and microphone unrestricted, so you can turn them on and off if you need/want to. Though we do ask that unless you're asking a question, please keep your microphone off. That way there's not like weird audio in the background for everybody else. Okay. But we're a couple of minutes past. I think everyone who's gonna show up is probably here. So we'll get started. If you don't know me, my name is Eli Pellegrino. I work for the Subsurface Wastewater Unit. We're part of the Drinking Water Program. We've been working on the HHE 200 and HHE 204 forms. And one of the requests that we got was to turn the form into a AutoCAD file so that site evaluators can actually use it. So we had Josh convert the form from a PDF into an AutoCAD, and he will be going over the form. Just before we get to that, though, as a reminder, yesterday we had the review of the HHE 200 and HHE 204 forms. If you missed that, we will have a recording of it put. Is anyone else having trouble hearing me? I can slow down. Okay. Thomas, I'm not sure why you're having trouble. I would maybe check your mic settings, or your audio settings. Yes, so yesterday we had a training that was recorded and it'll be put up on our website. I'll put the link for that in the chat in a minute. And on next Monday, Brent will be doing a training that's more of his kind of typical training like the one he does in March. It will be more on the rules. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And Josh, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Eli. Good afternoon, all. My name is Josh Gilder. I'm an environmental engineer / project manager working in the engineering unit of the Maine Drinking Water Program. My primary focus is on the project management within the state revolving fund, as well as reviews of treatment change applications for public water systems. I've been with the Drinking Water Program for about 2 years now. I'm working out of the Caribou, Maine location. Though construction season tends to mean that I'm traveling around the state quite a bit. Prior to working with the Maine Drinking Water Program, I did about 12 years as a civil engineer, primarily working on utility and industrial designs. As Eli mentioned, the subsurface wastewater team asked me to assist with creating CAD versions of this HHE 200 form. I have some AutoCAD experience, so I was able to assist. By no means am I an expert in CAD, but I can recreate the form. So I think how both a subsurface wastewater unit and I view these are these pages in their AutoCAD form are kind of a baseline or a starting point to use this in AutoCAD form. You know, we intended to provide a basic outline of the form with the intent that all of you can take that file, modify it for data entry and workflow, and however that best suits your needs. So once we get into the actual review of the CAD forms, you know, I think you'll see that the intent was, you know, to provide these as a sort of template, but without trying to limit or direct how, you know, you are actually using these forms. So with all that being said, I doubt we're going to use the full allotted time, so there should be plenty of time for questions at the end. And, you know, if questions arise as we go through each of the AutoCAD pages, feel free to chime in and we'll answer as best we can. Depending on the nature of those questions, you know, we may need to discuss internally, review, and we may need to follow up after the meeting, just depending on the nature. So with all that being said, I'm going to do a brief review of the PDF form, and then we'll move on to a more in-depth view of the AutoCAD versions of those pages. So I will share my screen. And you should now see the latest HHE 200 form that Eli and the subsurface wastewater team have been using. So scrolling through these first couple pages, you'll notice page 1, page 2 are quite text heavy. You know, a lot of text, a lot of check boxes that maybe are more in line with using fillable forms in the PDF version. And maybe pages 3 and 4 are more in line with using AutoCAD. So You might find it easier to mix and match certain pages and then combine into a single document at the end. But we wanted to provide options for everything. A few questions have popped up. John says the CAD template does not scale correctly. We can discuss that. I've done some internal testing, but I'm happy to take a look at some issues we may be having. And I think the next question is more for the subsurface wastewater team on if they can use the new forms now.
Based on the feedback that we received yesterday, we're going to need to tweak the form a little bit. So I wouldn't start using the forms now. We wait until there's like an official email that says that they're good to use.
Thank you, Eli. Okay, so scrolling through the PDF version, which I understand most of you sat through a webinar on this yesterday, multiple versions of page 3 and 4. And likewise, we also have multiple versions of page 3 and 4 in the AutoCAD format. So with all that being said, I'm going to jump over to the CAD versions and we'll walk through page by page and we'll go from there. So here is the first page. You'll notice that the layout, overall formatting of the CAD version more or less mirrors what you see in the PDF version. Font types, sizes are as close of a match to the PDF version as we could get. So the intent would be that, if you say we want to use page 1 and 2 of the PDF form and 3, 4 of the CAD format, you could combine those into a single document and it would appear, as a cohesive single document. So all of the work we have done is strictly in paper space. There is nothing in model space that we have included. The intent was to basically provide templates in this model space. You take those, modify them as needed for your specific projects and use cases. And then, if you want to use model space for some of your drawings and insert viewports, that would be how we foresee that being used. All of the data entry is done as attributes in AutoCAD. So some of these are single line items. In some places like the notes are multi-line text entry. So for these single line items, we have a placeholder for any of these form fields where we would expect you to enter data. If you click on that attribute, it'll pop up this attribute editor. You'd input your value for whatever your project specifications are. Click OK, and then move on through the attributes. For the multi-line, similar, you pop up the attribute editor. For the multi-line text, instead of typing in your value here, you'd click these 3 dots, and down here, you can enter any additional notes you may have. So all of the, the text for the actual form, the heading, all of these required form fields, these are all combined into a single block on each page. The intent is that you will not need to edit these blocks and that only the attributes or these checkboxes would be edited on each page. For these text boxes, all of these are set up for every page as you click on them, and it's a dynamic block for either check or uncheck. So if you click check, you have the checkbox appear. Uncheck, it's gone. So these types of attribute entries and the checkboxes are consistent across, page 1 through page 4, including the alternate design pages. So once you get into actually using these, hopefully it's a consistent process across the pages that you want to use. Thomas asks if CAD is a downloadable program. It is downloadable. You do need a license for it. So what I'm using here is an Autodesk AutoCAD product. This is the newest version, the 2026 version. Roger says that the checkboxes do not work with BricsCAD. I am unfamiliar with that CAD program, but I'm happy to help troubleshoot if you want to send us an email. You'll notice that certain form fields have been left blank. The thought process there is that some of these fields, such as signatures or dates, are likely to be entered after these pages are either printed or published. So, we left blank areas that we expect might be filled out after the form has been printed or published. So like I said, page 1, page 2 are quite text heavy. In my opinion, maybe AutoCAD isn't the best option, but we did want to provide you with the ability to use this. Use any pages in either the CAD format or the PDF format. So that said, we'll move on to page 2, which is quite similar to page 1. Again, attributes are set up in the same way. You would click on them, it'll prompt you to enter a value. These dynamic blocks are set up the same way, either check or uncheck. And again, this sheet has both single line text, such as this, or the multi-line text down here, where instead of being prompted to enter the value directly on this pop-up, you would have to click these 3 dots to the side and then enter directly in the paper space. Again, there's a few fields that have been left blank, such as the signature and the date. Again, we expect that these fields may be populated after this is printed or published out of AutoCAD. So that's the reasoning and the thought process behind why those pages are blank. We'll move on to page 3. Again, closely mirrors what you see in the PDF version of the HHE 200 form. This page 3, we have the 3 different options, the blank page, the grid, and then the alternate. And again, the layout is very similar across all 3 and aligns with what you see on the PDF form. So the first page, you have your blank space at the top of the paper to add your drawings, add your site location. So we would expect you to likely use a viewport here. You would do your actual drawing and line work in the model view, add a viewport to show it here. Site location is similar. Whether you're taking an image or if you're using the geolocate feature within AutoCAD to use a map base layer to populate the site location field. Attributes are set up the same way as the other pages. Click in, you'll be prompted to edit the value. Checkboxes, same way, check or uncheck for a dynamic block. The table layout at the bottom of the page. So this mirrors what you see in the PDF version. You would just click in individual cells. You can type as you need, and you only need to populate the cells that you wish to populate. There's the heading in row 1, textures, consistence, color, redux features, and then for your soil profiles, rows 2 through 25. And again, that's mirrored on the right side for another observation hole. We'll move on to the grid page for page 3.
Can
You'll
I ask a
notice,
question? Can I
yeah, go
interrupt
ahead.
and ask a question about that? That you said that we were in the model space on that page, yet that's attributes down in the soil profile description. And the attributes that we were doing on page 1 and 2, it was suggested that we might be doing the fill out the PDF form. But if we're going through this, I mean, one is in the page layout, one's in the model space. What would be done down in the soil profile? Would it be the page layout or the model space? Thank you for answering the question.
So how I foresee you would use this is currently how we have these laid out is everything is strictly in paper space. How I would see, if you're doing a plan view, you would do that in model space. You would insert a viewport into your paper space. You'd scale it, as needed to fill out the space. And that's how I foresee you using this. Am I correctly understanding your question?
Yeah, thank you. You already previously answered that. It just went over my head. Thanks.
Okay. So back to the grid sheet. Again, very similar to the blank sheet for page 3. You have, your grid at the top. It's a 1/4 inch grid layout. So the lines are spaced 1/4 inch apart. Down at the bottom, same attributes, checkboxes, and table for your soil properties. Moving on to page 4. Again, similar for the attributes. Click in, edit accordingly, and save. And again, I foresee these sheets being used where you do your drawings, your cross sections in model space, insert viewports to fill these top and bottom boxes, and then fill out the information accordingly. We don't want to say that's how you have to do it. If you want to do your drawings in paper space, that's perfectly reasonable. But I've always found that inserting viewports and scaling the viewport accordingly has worked the best for me. So similar again, we are not providing those viewports, but we foresee that as being a way that this probably would be used with AutoCAD. Page 4, basically the same as the page 4 blank sheet, with the exception being that we have a 1/4 inch grid layouts in these top and bottom drawing boxes for your plan view and your cross sections. Again, no viewports, but if you did choose to use it, we would expect that most of you would be doing those drawings in model space and then inserting viewports to view in paper space. Alternate page 3, again, uses similar methodology for the checkboxes, check versus uncheck. Attributes, single line attributes where you enter the value directly into this pop-up. This page is not going to have any multi-line attributes. It doesn't appear. And some of these fields are left blank because we anticipate that this information would be filled in after you print or publish these AutoCAD forms. Again, bottom, similar to page 3, where you have your tables, headings at the top, and then rows 2 through 25 for your soil properties below grade. And finally, we have the alternate design page, which is just a blank page, a few attributes at the top and bottom, and a few blank sections for the signature and the date. Again, no viewports, but we would anticipate that a lot of you would use model space to do your drawing and then insert viewports onto this page to show your drawings. A few final thoughts. For those of you that would be using AutoCAD, this is set up to be print or published using the AutoCAD CTB pen style that you know is a standard for AutoCAD. This wouldn't preclude you from using your own pen styles if you wanted to set up, if you have certain drawing layers you want to include in the sheet that are specific to your workflow, having an associated pen style that corresponds to those layers. We don't foresee that being any sort of an issue. Currently, there are only the 4 layers in this document: 0, def points, text, and the title block. Title block is this single block in the background that we don't expect you to edit. Text would be any of the attribute fields. And then the other 2, 0 and def points, I don't believe have anything in them, but are just kind of, your standard AutoCAD layers. So that is all I have as far as this presentation goes. We're happy to accept questions. We have plenty of time to, discuss, answer questions. Per discussion with Eli, there are a few changes to be made. So we will update this after the PDF form has been updated. We'll match any changes to that. And then once that's posted to the website, the subsurface wastewater team would inform you all. So happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Ted, it looks like your hand is up if you want to ask your question.
Oh, is my hand still on?
Oh, is it?
I couldn't unraise, sorry.
No, that's fine. Roger.
Thanks, Josh, for your work on this. Can you go back to the page with the test pit logs for a second? So each of the blocks is set up as its own text entity, essentially, right? So if you type in a long, like, let's say, very fine sandy loam under texture, that changes all the grid lines for me.
Oh. Yeah,
and
we
I
could
don't
definitely
know if that, and so then it goes down to, like, I don't know if it still goes to 48, how that, I just noticed wasn't sure about that part. Like, we could just add a text box over it, essentially. We could just do a multi-text right over the top of it, I guess.
Yeah, we can definitely look into adjusting text size so that it stays on one row, though. So that's definitely something we can consider before we publish the updated version to our website.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It looks like Thomas has a question in the chat. At what point will there be an AI program which requires a few data point and the AI can fill it all in? I do not have an answer to that. I don't know if Eli has any thoughts on that.
Probably not from the state anytime soon. I see a couple hands. I think Will, I see us first. Or William O'Connor.
Thanks so much for the work you guys have put in on these forms. I definitely appreciate it. our review of the forms yesterday that this particular portion of the new page 3 is going to have to be redone anyway. And there could be a lot simpler how we input the text into the soil test pit profile logs there, rather than be locking us into cells within a table. Really, all paper space is the ability to write on top and draw a line. So you could save yourself quite a bit of work by removing that particular functionality and space on which we can draw and enter M text.
It sounded like you were cutting in and out there a little bit. What I caught was that it sounds like we could remove the cells, but I didn't catch what it would look like instead.
A lot of what we end up doing in this particular part of the form anyway is we're just drawing. And so I don't think it needs to be as complicated as being a table with fillable cells, but just an area where we can enter consistency, color, and redox at whatever size is appropriate to make the form readable. I think if we undo the table, it'll be easier for you guys as the people building the forms and also for the end user.
Mm-hmm. So are you picturing it as like each one would just be kind of like a blank column? We would keep the scale on the side and it'd just be a blank column for each one?
Right. If you look at what we're dealing existing forms, there's some very light horizontal lines, and the row sizes are fairly uniform, and that is definitely important. Textures column, we're describing a lot more with regard to texture and actually color than we're ever going to with consistency or redox. So if you had to readjust the width of those columns, I'd also appreciate that, just to give us more room for the information that we're actually represent. I think that, while this all, it's hard to strike a balance, but trying to hold to a single font size that's wider columns for consistency and for redox than what we're ever going to need, maybe just needs to be a bit simpler, and simpler for the of a fillable chart, or almost like, lined legal pad paper than anything else. Just my 2 cents, but I do appreciate all on this.
Thanks. That's really helpful feedback. All right. Ted, it looks like your hand's up. If you want
Yeah, my question relates, thank you, Ellie, to the types of CAD. I'm not an engineer, but I've used BricsCAD for years now, for probably 20 years, with SeptiCAD software that Steve Marcotte wrote. And a bunch of us have done that. That's what we buy for $800 is a 2D replica of AutoCAD. In fact, the DWGs like this form will import into BricsCAD, I think, just fine. We can also purchase for $400 or $500 AutoCAD Lite, which is 2-dimensional software that doesn't have the functionality of AutoCAD, but is not $3,000 a year. And so my question after all that is, do you think 2D drafting that AutoCAD Lite might provide for site evaluators, might suffice for importing these AutoCAD documents, doing our drawings?
Yeah, so in my experience, when I was doing, production level drafting, almost all of my work was in 2D anyway. So even if I had, the full, almost $3,000 version of AutoCAD Lite really suited my needs, and I think would easily handle the needs of, what you would need to do for drawings on this form.
Thank you.
Roger, if you want to go.
Yeah, just responding to that and to Ted's comment. The only thing is, I don't think you can run a Lisp routine in AutoCAD Lite, the LT. I'm not sure if that's still, you didn't used to be able to. So if someone's buying LT and they want to run SeptiCAD, that could be a issue. because that runs on a Lisp routine, LSP, which is the AutoCAD programming language. So just a comment. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely good information.
Robert, I see your hand is up.
Hi, good afternoon. So I'm like an engineer by trade, so I use AutoCAD a lot. And I'm dorky enough that I created my own AutoCAD form. And to Josh's point, I've been using, and I created my own sheet 1 as a PDF. And I've been using sheet 1 as a PDF, and then I've created sheets 2 and 3, and I've made my own sheet 4 in AutoCAD. And to a gentleman's comment earlier about the tables on what you've got displayed now. So what I've done, and the reason I made my own forms is because I have everything in layers, right? So I have my own plot style, my own plot setting. So that's what drove me to do that. And Josh also touched on that. I've just created blocks. So for instance, on those 2 columns there, those 2 soil profile description tables, I've just created blocks. And what a gentleman said earlier, I just go in and I do a line and I just add text, M text. So, you know, if I have a change in color at 6 inches, I'll draw a line in the color box at 6 inches and I just put, brown, just as a simple text. And that's exactly how I do my table. So every time I open a drawing, I'm just really, and the beauty of that is I can just copy. So if I have, one site that's virtually the same as another, I can go through and I can almost just, basically copy with a base point, those descriptions and everything, and just put it right into another document and paste to original coordinates, or, just so my text is there. All those boxes, I do like the, fillable portion of it, but I literally just, edit it, change the 2 to 3 or whatever, because that's what works for me. But I think there's definitely a much simpler way and probably a little cleaner way, at least, to do those 2 tables. That's just my dorky engineer in me. But I do definitely think there's some opportunities here to streamline this in an AutoCAD. And I will be absolutely happy to send you what I've done. And you can explode them, look at them. It's just, like I said, they're all on my plot style. That's why I did it that way.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Good information. And yeah, I'd be happy to take a look at what you have done.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions before we wrap things up? Well, thank you so much for your questions and your feedback today. We really appreciate it. And just as a reminder, keep a lookout. Oh. Okay. I saw, Roger, you have a comment in the chat. Keep a lookout on the webpage that I linked. That's where yesterday's training is going to go up. Any changes to the forms are going to go up there. Probably I'll have our webmaster put some sort of comment so that you know that they've changed. And otherwise, for those of you coming to Brent's training on Monday, we will see you then. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Bye.